Hey y'all, it's Betsy from Cuttin Corners Vinyl, and today I have a fun video. Well, it's actually a product review. So, a couple of weeks ago, I was on Amazon surfing through the Amazon store, which is something I do now on a regular basis since I can't go anywhere and shop. So, I came across this product and I was actually excited to look at it. So, this is the Pixiss handheld rechargeable epoxy resin mixer. So this retails for $29.99, and I was like, ooh, that's kind of cool. So this is just like a kind of like a mini drill. So I've already charged it, so it goes forwards and backwards. And to change out the little head, you pull it up and it locks it into place. So there are 3 of these things, and these will also fit on a standard drill, and these are not silicone. I was hoping they would be silicone, because silicone for epoxy resin is so much easier to clean, but you just load it in and it kind of stays. You know, kind of a simple concept. It does come with the USB charger. So I made these 2 coasters. So one I mixed by hand and one I mixed with the Pixiss. Can you tell the difference? Probably not, but I will say this, my wrist can tell a difference. Now, when we go through the product review, I will show you how I made both of them and kind of go over the ins and outs of what I think about it. There are some good things, there are some bad things. I will go ahead and say that up front. But if you're interested in finding out my thoughts about this, I will let you know. Now, again, I purchased this with my own money. These are my honest opinions. I did link it in my Amazon store if you're interested in purchasing it. But I will say this, that these things I think are worth more than this thing is by itself. Because if you have a drill at home, I would rather purchase these separately than buy this. So, if you'll give me a moment to change the camera angle, I will go over all of my thoughts. So, this is all of the tools and supplies that I used for this tutorial. So, there is the Pixiss mixer. So, as you can see, it came with 3 separate mixing heads. And also, you can see laid out on my table are my silicone pads. Now, most of the supplies that I use are silicone because they are reusable. So, my molds are silicone. I have my silicone gloves, my silicone spatula, silicone fingertip gloves. There is my bronze pigment, my respirator. Everything is linked in my Amazon storefront if you are interested in getting anything. I also have some alcohol wipes. Those are easy to grab to clean as you go. My safety goggles. I have regular acetone nail polish remover. I also have behind that some isopropyl alcohol. Then I decided to use my Hippie Crafter epoxy resin because it is a thicker epoxy, so it is a little bit harder to stir by hand. Again, all of my cups and things like that are silicone because I like to have things that are reusable instead of something that is throwaway. Now, one of the things I will tell you, then I also have my crushed crystal pigment. That is one of my favorite things to use. That, as you can tell, everything is in my filming space right now. Typically, when I do my epoxy, I do it either in the garage or outside. And I did this on camera with my respirator on. As soon as I was finished, I moved everything to the garage. I don't leave it in here. You need to do this in a well-ventilated space. Epoxy is toxic. You need to wear your safety equipment. Just so you know, don't live life on the wild side. Make sure you wear your safety gear. That's one thing you should definitely make sure you do. So, we're going to go over and show you how to do this. Okay, so the first thing we do is we start off by mixing equal parts, which I am mixing 40 mils each of epoxy and 40 mils each of hardener. So that's 80 total of resin, epoxy resin for each coaster. So in each of the cups you see to the side, the heart-shaped and the regular is in the heart shape is water and alcohol is in the other one. And as you can see, I already have both of my cans of or containers of pigments open. That definitely helps to have everything prepared so that way you can kind of keep things clean as you go. I definitely like to keep things clean. Now, I typically would have my gloves on, but trying to do this on camera, it makes it a little bit harder. So I do have my silicone finger covers on, and I do have my alcohol wipes ready to go so I don't get it on my hands, because that is one of my things that I really, really don't like to deal with, is having it get all over me. I think it just feels disgusting. Okie dokie. So, and as I go along, I definitely try to keep things clean and close everything up, because for me, it's just easier to keep things mess free. And as you can see, I also have my table good and covered. And if I could find bigger silicone mats, I would, because I think that that is very, very important. So, and I will also fully mix each side as I go. So that's part of it. And as I said before, like with the Hippie Crafters, you can tell it is thick. It is, I mean, you can look at that. It is so thick. It's a good quality resin, but Hippie Crafters, and this is part of the reason I wanted to test it with it too, is it can get some bubbles in it too. And I wanted to see how it worked with this as well. So it's thick. It's so thick. But I did end up getting some wrist fatigue from mixing it by hand. And one of the things you can tell too is, like, I will also hold my cup with a alcohol wipe, so that way if I do accidentally get it out of the cup, it doesn't end up all over my hand. That is a tip and trick that I can tell you. And then I always mix in my pigment, and then I pour it into my mold. And I didn't do any extra special preparation after I poured it into my mold. I just let it sit. I didn't take and run a heat gun over it or anything like that, because I wanted to see what it looked like after it had set. I didn't want to try to prep any bubbles or anything like that. I wanted to see if mixing it by hand versus mixing it with the mixer made any difference in the amount of bubbles that it had, because, you know, those are things that are actually important to see. So give me a minute and we'll go over what it looked like when we demolded it. I'll say before we jump into the demolding process that the cleanup of the plastic things were pretty easy to do. Now, demolding, they turned out really well. Now, as you can see, that the mixer side did turn out really well. Now, I still had some air bubbles, but nothing really major with it. It turned out pretty good. And now with the hand side, you can see that there are quite a few more bubbles in it. Now, I will tell you, I went a little sander happy, and you will see me. I should have left well enough alone, but I get into this thing where especially I get a little sander happy. But all in all, I do think that they turned out really, really beautiful. As you can see, I am using, and part of it is I got a new Dremel. It's a Dremel Light, and then those are my sanding pads. I'm showing you what I'm using. But I get into this thing where I want to make things perfect, and then sometimes I get a little bit overzealous. But while I'm showing you this where I'm getting a little overzealous, my thoughts on the Pixiss is that the little drill doesn't have enough power and oomph behind it if you were doing anything more than what I was mixing. So the little cups at 80 mils was enough for that drill. But if you were doing anything more, you would need something more powerful. And also, I would be worried because the size of the head on those mixing spatulas is only about the size of a silver dollar. It isn't very big around. So if you were doing something more, it might not be enough. But it did mix the pigment beautifully. Like the powder pigments, it mixed in so quick. And even with that thicker pigment, it worked it through so well. There wasn't a lot of bubbles. Now, I think if I were working with a thinner pigment, it would have done so much better. And I think if I were working with a drill that had more power, it would have done better as well. Like, I think even if I would have worked with the Dremel, it would have done better. But I do love how the projects came out. I think that they did really well. I love making coasters and things like that, and I am going to play with it a little bit more, but I am going to play with the heads of it with my regular drill, and I will kind of keep you updated because I do enjoy working with epoxy. But again, remember, if you are playing with epoxy, take your precautions. Don't just sit there and think that you don't need to take safety precautions, because it is extremely important. So overall, I think if you are playing with smaller batches of epoxy, maybe making earrings, that kind of thing, that you might be interested in trying it. I do think that you can buy the heads on it separate. I think you can find them like on Etsy. You might even be able to find them on Amazon. I will try to link them if I see them, if I remember to. But all in all, I think it's not the worst value in the world. But I do think that you would be better off trying to find the heads for small projects and sticking with your regular everyday drill. Hopefully that makes sense. But hopefully you like this video. If you do, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Remember that sharing is caring. Share this with all your friends that do epoxy, or your craft loving friends, because you can also use this to mix paint and things like that. Now, I do think that if you use this for paint mixing, it might work a little bit better, because I think it would have enough power for thinner things. So I guess that's it. So we'll see y'all later. Bye.